Before we begin, I thought it would be fun if everyone lets me know in the comments where they're watching this video from. And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe. Now, let's start today's episode. Billy Fainer. Billy Fainer, only 22 years old, went missing under mysterious circumstances. Originally from Brooklyn, Billy had become involved in trouble, prompting his parents to send him to a horse ranch in California owned by a former neighbor in 1984. They hoped the move would distance him from bad influences. Billy worked and lived there for a while, but by late 1984 and into 1985, he disappeared without a trace, leaving his family unaware of what had happened to him. On October 27, 1985, a father and son were walking on a ranch in Parker County, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, searching for a potential location to build a new home. During their walk, they stumbled upon skeletonized remains. The remains were buried in a shallow grave, partially covered by foliage and disturbed by animals. Authorities were notified immediately. The remains were believed to belong to someone between the ages of 15 and 20, and the victim had been shot to death. His clothes, including a pair of gas blue jeans and a Union Bay white fleece jacket, were found scattered around the area. Despite the presence of clothing, no identification was found at the scene. Sheriff's deputies began checking missing persons reports but couldn't find anyone matching the description. The victim was given the name of John Parker Doe. Years would go by and the case grew cold. Over the years, authorities tried everything from facial reconstruction, DNA phenotyping, and genealogical testing to try and identify the young victim. In 2018, DNA was extracted and sent to Paraben Nanolabs to determine the victim's characteristics, which were previously unknown. Through DNA phenotyping, John Parker Doe was finally given a face. He had fair skin, brown or hazel eyes, brown or black hair, zero or few freckles, and was of European ancestry. This disputed their earlier assumptions that the victim was of mixed race. With the new information, a more accurate 3D facial reconstruction was made, but it still did not generate any leads. Before I continue, I want to remind you that only a small percentage of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed. So if you enjoy my content, consider subscribing. It's free and you can always change your mind later. Now let's move on with the video. C.C. Moore from Paraben Nanolabs uploaded the victim's DNA to GEDmatch, and over the next 18 months, 100 of hours were spent to try and find any relative of John Parker Doe. Soon, they found a potential first and second cousin. However, the cousins were found to be adopted and did not know their biological family. The genealogists then tried to find biological parents of the adoptees to be able to find some lead for John Parker Doe eventually. They were able to find a possible birth father of one of the adoptees, but they couldn't confirm it through DNA as the man was already deceased. Fortunately, one of the man's biological sons agreed to take a DNA test, and it was uploaded to GEDmatch. In a breakthrough, it was found that he was the first cousin to John Parker Doe. C.C. Moore then built a family tree and searched for a male between the ages of 15-20 that had gone missing. She found one name in the New York Birth Index that seemed like it could be a match. No records were available for him after he entered his early 20s. His name was Billy Fainer. Authorities soon tracked down Billy's parents, who were living in Florida. The family provided a DNA sample, and a DNA test confirmed that the victim indeed was Billy Fainer. Hurricane Sandy had destroyed all the photos from when Billy lived in Brooklyn, but his family was able to provide a photo from grade school. Determined to find answers, investigators tracked down people who had worked with Billy on the California ranch. It was found that while working at the ranch, Billy met a man named Forrest Ethington, who lived in the Dallas area. Forrest convinced Billy to join him and travel to Texas, where they would perform several robberies. The pair pulled some heists together in Texas, and then Billy decided to fly solo. However, Billy got caught and was set to go to court for the robbery. This worried Forrest because Billy might turn on him and reveal his robberies as well. Forrest then told the witness that he was going to try to kill Billy to silence him. Forrest then went to a remote part of the Texas ranch and shot Billy once in the back of the head. Detectives were prepared to charge Forrest with Billy's murder, but in January 2020, they discovered that Forrest had already passed away. After Billy's death, Forrest had been involved in a botched heist at a coin shop in Pontiac, Texas. During the robbery, one of Forrest's crew members killed the shop owner. The FBI apprehended Forrest after he attempted to sell the stolen coins at a coin show. Forrest was sentenced to 5 years in prison for the crime but appealed in 1991. In 2010, he was arrested again, this time for aggravated assault against a person under 18. Forrest died in prison in October 2019. Billy's disappearance and murder were finally resolved after 35 years. Though Billy's family did not receive the justice they had hoped for, they were able to gain the closure they so deeply needed. Moving on to the next case. Dorothy Lynn. On October 27, 1997, Michigan State Police officers were called to an area near Fox Farm Road in Manistee County after a report of a deceased, unclothed woman who seemed to have washed up on shore. The only clue to her identity was one earring. An autopsy concluded that the woman had drowned, and it appeared to be an accidental death. In September 2020, detectives with the Michigan State Police, Cadillac Post, and the department's Missing Persons Coordination Unit revisited the case and decided to exhume the woman for advanced DNA testing. Bone samples were sent to Astrea Forensics under the DNA Dope Project for Forensic Genetic Genealogy. In July 2021, a possible familial match was identified. The DNA Dope Project provided potential leads, which were submitted to the Michigan State Police for verification. The connection linked the remains to the Ting family in Aroostook, Maine. Familial DNA reference samples from a potential brother were collected for further analysis. Finally, on January 9, 2023, the Michigan State Police identified the Jane Doe as 26-year-old Dorothy Lynn Thingricker. Dorothy had last been seen on October 2, 1997, at 12:30 p.m. by officers from the St. Francis Police Department in Wisconsin. At that time, she had not been reported missing, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The following day, an abandoned vehicle was discovered nearby, with its license plate registered to a missing/endangered person report filed by the Chicago Police Department. Investigators are now working to determine whether Dorothy's drowning was accidental, a suicide, or the result of foul play. Moving on to the next case. Janita Phillips. In 1986, a sanitation worker in Greenwich, Connecticut discovered the body of a newborn baby boy in his truck after emptying a dumpster. An autopsy revealed that the baby had been strangled and was less than a day old. Investigators spoke with local residents in an attempt to identify the parents, but were unable to gather any useful leads. At the time, DNA technology was still in its early stages and insufficient to trace relatives. However, in 2019, investigators from the Greenwich Police Department revisited the case. They used genetic genealogy to analyze the DNA sample they had collected from the baby. This method led them to a woman they believed to be the mother. Following the lead, they traveled to a house in Lake Mary, Florida, where the woman was believed to be residing. Investigators collected items from the trash and recycling bins outside her home, and through DNA analysis, confirmed that the woman was indeed the baby's mother. The woman is 62-year-old Janita Phillips. Investigators decided to interview her. She then confessed. Janita said that she kept the pregnancy a secret to everyone. She gave birth to a baby boy in her apartment, strangled him, and then left him in a bag in the dumpster outside the building in Greenwich, Connecticut. Court documents show that back in 1986, Janita was interviewed, but then she denied any knowledge of what had happened and refused to take a blood test. In Janita's statement to the police, she wrote that she knew her husband did not want any more kids and had big dreams of becoming a fashion designer. I didn't want to crash his dreams and fall down the rabbit hole of having a bunch of kids and stuck with bills and not being able to care for them or get to achieve his dreams, reads the statement in part. DNA has also confirmed that Janita's husband is the father of the baby boy. According to her, he had no knowledge of what she did. Attorney Lindy Urso, who was representing Janita, expressed that her client is deeply remorseful about the events of that time in her life. According to Urso, Janita has moved past the trauma and lived a fulfilling life since then. She's never been arrested before and has raised a family, been married, and worked steadily for 30 years in the same industry. It's curious, however, that Lindy Urso seems to downplay the gravity of what happened. The situation takes on an ironic twist when it's revealed that Janita was caught because the DNA she unknowingly left in the trash was matched to the baby she abandoned. Moving on to the next case. Jasmine Featherstone. In June 2020, the remains of an unidentified woman were discovered in Elizabeth, New Jersey, near the railroad tracks on the 300 block of Port Avenue. Investigators quickly responded to the scene and transported the body for an autopsy. The results revealed that the woman had been murdered. She was identified as a black woman, likely between the ages of 25 and 35 at the time of her death. She stood around 5 feet 6 inches tall and weighed between 125 to 140 pounds. The woman had short hair and double piercings in both ears. A forensic sketch was created and shared with the public in the hopes of identifying her, but despite extensive efforts, investigators were unable to determine her identity. She became known as Union County Jane Doe 2020, with no significant leads coming forward to solve her case. Details of the woman's unidentified person case were entered into the National and Unidentified Missing Person System. In March 2023, 3 years after the discovery of the woman's remains, the Union County Prosecutor's Office partnered with Othraming to determine if advanced DNA testing could help provide an identity for the woman or a close relative. The Union County Prosecutor's Office Forensic Laboratory submitted forensic evidence to Othram's laboratory in the Woodlands, Texas. Othram's scientists used forensic-grade genome sequencing to build a comprehensive DNA profile for the woman. Othram's in-house genetic genealogy team used the DNA profile in a genealogical search to provide investigative leads that were returned to investigators. Using these leads, detectives were able to narrow down the search and identify the victim as Jasmine Featherstone of Elizabeth, New Jersey. Jasmine was 23 years old at the time her life was ended and previously lived in Middletown, Connecticut. The identification was announced in June 2023. The investigation into what exactly happened to Jasmine is still ongoing by investigators. Anyone with information about the case is urged to call the Union County Prosecutor's Office and speak to Sergeant Lamar Hartfield at 908-451-1873. Tips can be submitted anonymously by phone at 908,654 tips. If you provide a tip that leads to an indictment and conviction, you are eligible for a reward of up to $10,000. Moving on to the next case. Jean Tuggy, a 60-year-old woman from Pine Grove Mills, Pennsylvania, was found dead in her home on January 21, 2016. She had been shot twice with a 9mm pistol, and it was clear that her death was not a suicide. Nothing had been stolen from her home, and no evidence was left behind. The initial investigation did not provide any significant leads. However, investigators recently uncovered new information that could help move the case forward. They discovered that Jean had formed a friendship with one of her coworkers, Christopher Kowalski, who had developed romantic feelings for her. Investigators also learned that at the time her life taken he owned a 9mm pistol. He sold it and moved to South Carolina. Investigators located the owner of the pistol, and after examination of the weapon, it was determined that the pistol was most likely the same one used to take Jean's life. Investigators then went to South Carolina to interview Kowalski. He immediately confessed and admitted he is responsible. He was then taken to Pennsylvania to be prosecuted. It had not been revealed yet why he did what he did. Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro had this to say: "Thanks to the diligent efforts of the lawyers, investigators and fellow members of law enforcement who never gave up on this case. The arrest of Christopher Kowalski is the first step towards putting him behind bars. The Tuggy family has waited too long for justice, but we hope this helps them heal." Moving on to the next case. Nova Welsh. Nova Welsh was born in Jamaica in June 1957 into a supportive and caring family. When she was 10 years old, her family moved to the United Kingdom in search of a better life. At 16, she began a relationship with a boyfriend and soon moved in with him after becoming pregnant with their first child. The couple eventually had 2 children, Jonathan and Leah. They resided in a 3-story apartment on Lighthorn Avenue in Ladywood, Birmingham. Osmond Bell, Nova's partner and the father of her children, was a violent man, and frequent arguments between them were common. Those who were close to Nova knew about the dysfunctional and abusive nature of her relationship with Osmond. She had confided in her sister, Valerie Welsh, that Osmond would occasionally hit her, and neighbors who lived beneath them reported hearing constant shouting and fights. Over time, Nova grew increasingly unhappy with living with Osmond, and her once strong feelings of love for him faded, overshadowed by his ongoing abuse. Nova Welsh eventually found new love and began dating a man named Wayne Newby. Like in any typical relationship, Wayne often visited Nova at her apartment, but Osmond Bell disapproved of another man in the picture, causing more tension between the couple. Their constant arguments grew worse, particularly over Nova's late-night outings. According to Nova's stepsister, Sonia, the couple had a heated dispute one evening. Sonia, hearing screams, went into the kitchen to check what was happening and found a frightened Nova and an enraged Osmond, who had a dishcloth wrapped around his hands. Sensing the escalating tension, Sonia decided to call the police, even though Osmond had tried to stop her. When the police arrived, Nova did not file a formal complaint against Osmond. She explained to the officers that they had been arguing, and she wanted him to leave. In early July 1981, Osmond Bell finally left the apartment, which was in Nova's name. His outburst likely stemmed from his inability to tolerate seeing another man in his space, making him feel emasculated. While all this was unfolding, Nova Welsh's family had relocated to the United States, hoping that she and her 2 children would join them soon. Loved by all, Nova easily made new connections with both family and friends. She was outspoken and often confided in her friends about the troubles in her relationship. She once told her friend, Joan Campbell, that Osmond Bell had strangled her so tightly around the neck that it hurt, and she showed another friend, Pauline Davies, the bruises left on her skin. Nova explained that Osmond had attempted to strangle her because she had gone out at night. After he left, Osmond began sending her threatening letters, telling her that if he couldn't have her, no one could. One of these letters even included a threat to kill her, stating, "If you don't have me back, you know what I will have to do." Nova decided to sever all ties with him and shifted her focus to her new relationship with Wayne Newby. However, on July 27, 1981, Nova suddenly stopped answering her phone. Her mother, Lorna Welsh, had tried to call her from the United States to confirm when she would be coming to join the family, but the 24-year-old mother of 2 wouldn't pick her calls and had disappeared with no trace. Her friends were equally surprised about her sudden disappearance because it was very unlike her to leave without informing anyone. According to her friends, before her disappearance, she had dropped off her 2 children with her ex-lover, Osmond Bell, and had gone out dancing with her new boyfriend Wayne Newby and a group of friends. She returned that evening but appeared upset. Neighbors said that they had heard crying and fighting coming from Nova's apartment on the day she disappeared. They felt it was a usual occurrence, as her ex-lover was known to be violent and abusive. Weeks went by without a word from Nova. Her mother became even more distressed that she couldn't get a hold of her daughter. Nova Welsh didn't show up at her job where she worked as a part-time cleaner. Her disappearance was getting worrisome to everybody around her. So, 2 weeks later, on August 9, 1981, her best friend reported her missing to the police. The police then came into her apartment to search for clues that could have led to her disappearance. While they were investigating her case, Osmond Bell was interviewed by the police. He knew she was missing but never reported it to the police, claiming that he thought she had ran away with her new boyfriend or visited her family in the United States. His explanation seemed logical enough, and without evidence, the police were forced to release him. The search for Nova continued. On August 12, 1981, friend Lorna Edmond received an anonymous letter saying that the author's boyfriend had seen Nova and the same guy she had been out with night before grabbed her and hit her. The writer was implying that Wayne Newby had something to do with Nova Welsh's disappearance. The police investigated the letter and still had no clue on what had happened to Nova Welsh. The forensics determined the letter to be truly written by a female. The police, who had interviewed Wayne Newby before, called him in for another round of interrogation. He still maintained that he had nothing to do with Nova Welsh's disappearance. On August 18, 1981, there was a shocking discovery made in the flat where Nova Welsh lived. Neighbors reported an awful smell coming from somewhere in Nova's apartment. When the maintenance team came around to search the apartment, a strong smell pulled them towards the stairs. Just beneath it, they discovered a utility cupboard, and in it lies Nova's decomposed body, covered in a blanket and newspapers. Nova Welsh, whom the police and the public had been looking for, was in her apartment, dead and rotting away. According to her autopsy results, Nova had suffered from a broken neck which led to her death. Her death came as a shock to everyone in her community. Her family in Miami was informed about the discovery, and they were so sad and heartbroken. In a bid to find the perpetrator of this evil act, the police started their investigation. The first suspect that came to mind was Osmond Bell. He was then arrested and held in custody for 4 days while the police did their initial investigation. The issue of the letter Lorna Edmond had received was brought up, and the police asked Osmond Bell if he knew anything about the author of the letter. He, however, denied it. Due to lack of sufficient evidence to link Osmond Bell to the killing, they were forced to release him again. The police did all they could to find Nova Welsh's murderer, but all efforts was in vain. After a while, the case went cold for 35 years. In 2016, when there was a significant advancement in DNA technology, detectives from the Cold Case Department were going through cold cases. They became particularly focused and hopeful in Nova Welsh's case. Her file contained a piece of chewing gum that was used to close secure the cupboard door of where her body had been found, and also, there was the letter that had been sent to Lorna Edmond. Having taken the evidence to a crime lab, they found out that the DNA on the chewing gum is the same as the DNA on the seal of the letter. After that, they got a court order to secure DNA from the initial suspects in 1981. DNA was taken and compared with that of the chewing gum and letter. Fortunately, there was a match. He was then arrested and had his trial started, and at the court, witnesses took their stand, citing his abusive nature and the letters he had written to Nova Welsh threatening to kill her if she left him. Nova Welsh's neighbors, Carmen and Wendell Turner, who lived in the flat below, had heard what appeared to be the cupboard door being forcibly shut on the night Nova Welsh disappeared on July 26, 1981. At around 12:30 a.m. In the early hours of the next day, Carmen and Wendell Turner heard 2 bangs. They said the second bang sounded like somebody was kicking the door. Carmen said the noise could have come from the cupboard. The prosecution of the case argued that despite finding out that Nova Welsh was missing, Osmond Bell never reported to the police because he is the killer. He further mentioned that the letter and the seal of the envelope was taken for testing for DNA, and it matched with that of Osmond Bell. The prosecution said he sealed the envelope to divert suspicion onto Wayne Newby, which it did at the time. However, Osmond Bell had a different opinion to that, saying his DNA must have appeared on the letter when he touched it while being subjected to a dark and terrible interrogation in the days after Nova Welsh's body was found. He claimed that during a break in police interviews, he was left alone in the room where he had been allowed to touch and read the letter. When asked by his attorney, Jeremy Dine, if he had ever been in the cupboard where Nova Welsh's body was found, he said he had been there up to 3 times while running a business cupboard with his business partner and his brother. He said in court, "The very first time we went in was to gain access to the pipe. We were going to attach a hose to the stopcock." He further claimed to have used a discarded piece of gum as a form of filler in order to secure the door after he had forced it open. He said he had secured the cupboard by using the screws that were there and also used the chewing gum in place of glue. To him, all these explains why his DNA was found on the letter and chewing gum. Osmond Bell fervently denied killing Nova Welsh. In his words, he said, "We had 2 wonderful children, and, although we had our differences towards the end, you do have feelings for the mother of your children." The prosecutor, who wasn't buying Osmond Bell's lies, said it's 1,000,000,000 to 1 chance of the DNA not matching Osmond Bell. He is the man that tampered with the lock on the cupboard door and hid the body there. It would be an extreme coincidence if the killer was somebody other than Osmond Bell. However, after a long 6 weeks trial, the court determined that the murder had not been premeditated. The judge said Osmond Bell got into a fit of rage when he found out that Nova Welsh was seeing another man. Some people seemed to disagree with the judge, citing letters Osmond had written to Nova Welsh, threatening to kill her if she left him. They concluded that it was indeed premeditated. Regardless, Osmond Bell was cleared of murder but was convicted of manslaughter by an 11-to-1 majority verdict at the Birmingham Crown Court. He was then sentenced to 12 years in prison. The judge said he would serve half of his time in prison and the other half on license. Nova Welsh's family and friends are happy for the eventual justice and closure they now have. Nova Welsh's sister, Valerie Welsh, said the family had forgiven her sister's killer. In her words, "To be honest, my family and we forgive him, but he still need to pay for what he done." Lorna Edmond, Nova's best friend, said, "Nova was a lovely person, always happy and smiling. She was a devoted mother who loved her 2 boys very much. I often think about the old times and the things we used to do. I still miss Nova and only hope that her family can now find some peace. Nova can rest in peace knowing that justice has been done. I will never forget her. Until we meet again, Nova. Love, your friend Lorna." Nova's mother, Lorna Welsh, expressed. "After 36 long years, Nova can finally rest in peace. The family can now find closure, knowing that the person who took Nova's life has been held accountable. I sincerely thank everyone involved in bringing this case to court." In her victim impact statement, Lorna Welsh described Nova as gentle, loving, and full of life, and she mourned the tragic loss that robbed her of the chance to see her children grow into young adults. Many cold cases are now being solved, giving families of murder victims a glimmer of hope. We hope that those responsible for such heinous acts are brought to justice before they are allowed to escape accountability. What are your thoughts on this case? Moving on to the next case. Phoenix Cen. Phoenix Cen was a curious, energetic, and musically gifted young woman. Her passion for her faith and her artistic abilities were tragically interrupted by her mysterious disappearance in December 2011, leaving everyone who knew her, both personally and through online communities, searching for answers in a sea of evidence. This is an exploration of Phoenix Cen's disappearance and the mystery surrounding the 900 block of St. Clair Avenue. Phoenix was born on May 23, 1988, to parents Gloria and Lawrence Cen. After spending part of her childhood in sunny California, Lawrence's work relocated the family to the greater St. Louis, Missouri area, where they would remain. The Cens settled in the residential neighborhood of Spanish Lake, a quiet, middle-class suburb, where Gloria and Lawrence dedicated themselves to raising their bright and cherished daughter. Phoenix grew up in a household grounded in church and Christian values. Her parents closely monitored her behavior and social interactions, ensuring she remained kind, compassionate, and respectful. Alongside these values, Phoenix developed a deep love for music and a natural talent for playing instruments. Every Saturday morning, she would practice on the family's piano, quickly falling in love with the craft and using it as a means to express herself. Phoenix spent more time at home once she entered middle school. After her parents decided that homeschooling would be a better fit than public school, Phoenix adapted without complaint. Although this decision sheltered her from a world beyond what she was used to, she never minded. Her passion for learning and academics was unmatched, and she excelled in all her subjects. When not focused on schoolwork or creating music, Phoenix honed her fencing skills, attending rigorous practices that led her to become the local junior fencing champion. From 2007 to 2011, Phoenix attended the University of Missouri, St. Louis, moving into an apartment with a friend. During this period, Phoenix began to show a different side of herself, struggling to balance her sheltered upbringing with the pressures of adulthood. She began arguing with her parents more often and engaging in risky behavior. While this change contrasted with the Phoenix they knew, Neither Gloria nor Lawrence believed it was anything more than typical adolescent growing pains. That was until May 2011, when Phoenix returned home at her mother's insistence, and the tension in the house escalated. Over the following months, Phoenix's behavior grew increasingly erratic, culminating in the end of her longtime friendship with her neighbor, Akira. After a heated argument, Phoenix was forced to admit that something in her life was troubling her, a matter that neither Akira nor the Colden family could uncover. As the warmth of summer faded into the coldness of winter, Phoenix's crisis deepened. Those closest to her, including her parents and a few friends, noticed that she had become a completely different person. The vibrant, humorous, faith-driven woman who had once been eager to meet the world's expectations was now a shadow of her former self. Both Gloria and Lawrence Colden felt that their daughter was on the verge of returning to her true self, but they never had the chance to find out. On a quiet Sunday afternoon, Phoenix walked out of their home in Spanish Lake for what would be the final time, never to be seen or heard from again. The only trace left behind was her car, abandoned in the middle of St. Clair Avenue, with just a few personal belongings left in it. Phoenix had first met Akira in 2005 in the Spanish Lake neighborhood, and the two quickly became close friends. Because Phoenix was homeschooled, she would wait at the bus stop each day to greet Akira after school. However, Phoenix wasn't allowed to visit the Hogan household often, so her interactions with Akira and her mother, Martini, were limited to conversations on the front porch. The Hogans often saw Phoenix's parents as overly strict because of this. In the fall of 2007, Phoenix enrolls in the University of Missouri, St. Louis, eager to explore lifestyles differing from the religious-tempered world she knew growing up. Around the time of starting college classes, Phoenix meets a guy named Michael B. They soon enter a romantic relationship despite her parents' disapproval of him. Over the next few years, Phoenix and Michael B hide most of their intimacy from the Cauldron family. They move into an apartment together with the help of Phoenix's mother, Gloria, who signs the lease under the impression that her daughter is moving in with a female friend. Gloria proceeds to visit the flat multiple times in the duration Phoenix lives there, and not once sees a clue that alerts her a man is living there. At some point in 2010, Phoenix informs her childhood friend, Akira, back at home that she wants to leave Michael B, but isn't sure about how to go about it. Instead, she starts meeting other men. One of the men is another person named Michael, referred to as Cell Phone Mike. Phoenix heats up a second romantic relationship with Cell Phone Mike behind the back of Michael B. Around the same time, Phoenix purchases an alternative cell phone plan behind the back of her parents. She uses the burner phone to communicate with Cell Phone Mike and her phone from the family plan to upkeep her normal life with Gloria, Lawrence, and Michael B. In the months leading up to spring of 2011, Phoenix secretly steals money out of the Colden family's safe in their home. The money in question is in the form of savings bonds under Gloria Colden's name. Phoenix discreetly cashes these bonds at various points, pulling in around $2,500. What happens to this money is unknown. When May of 2011 arrives, Phoenix moves back in with her parents per their request after they decide paying for the apartment is financially difficult, and their house is technically closer than her apartment is to the university. The situation begins to unravel in the summer of 2011, when Phoenix has a mental breakdown in front of her friend Akira. Phoenix claims she has the feeling that she's being followed, specifically saying that an anonymous person or people are watching her and the Colton family in the park one day. It is a paranoid discussion with an unsettling foreshadowing in which Phoenix shares she has a feeling that something is after her and something is going to happen. On November 15, 2011, Phoenix records a selfie video on her phone while she sits in her car, expressing the extreme frustration she has with herself and the emotional crisis she's in. Phoenix appears distressed and on the verge of tears, saying things like she wishes she could start over. She also recites an altered version of the Serenity Prayer. During Thanksgiving break later in the month, Phoenix meets with an old friend from her teenage years, Tim Baker. She confides in him that despite telling people she's at the university, she never actually enrolled in classes that semester. Keeping the secret from her family, Tim knows about the second burner phone and realizes Phoenix is living a double life and feels like she's hiding something from him too. Not long afterwards, sometime at the end of November or early December, Phoenix has another fiery incident with Akira. This time she argues with her best friend about petty little issues regarding their friendship and Michael B. It escalates when Phoenix reveals she carries a 10-inch dagger knife stored in the driver's side door of her car. Akira thinks Phoenix is just trying to intimidate her and claims she's done nothing wrong. After Phoenix hints that she's going somewhere to get away, Akira claims this mental state is totally abnormal for Phoenix, and like Tim Baker, feels that her friend is hiding something. Throughout the first weeks of December, Phoenix makes an increasing number of phone calls to her original boyfriend, Michael B., via her family-planned cell phone. On December 17th, she engages in 10 separate phone conversations, ending with a 116-minute call, unknown as to what it is about and if it played a role in the mind-numbing mystery about to unfold. At 9:34 a.m. On December 18th, 2011, Phoenix makes a 2-minute phone call to her friend Rosie, again using a family-planned cell phone. 5 minutes later, at 9:41 a.m., Phoenix makes a 6-minute call to Michael B. on the same cell phone as before. At 11 a.m., Phoenix attends the morning service with her mother, Gloria, at their usual church. Phoenix performs in the handbell choir and appears like her normal self to the congregation's pastor, Mark Miller. After church, Phoenix makes the last recorded call on her family-planned cell phone to Michael B., a call that only lasts 1 minute with unknown details. Not much time passes before Phoenix and Gloria run an errand to the grocery store around 2 p.m. On the way home to Spanish Lake, Phoenix turns to Gloria and says, "Ma'am, we need to get back to the way we used to be." Gloria responds asking, "What do you mean, Phoenix?" And Phoenix says, "We just need to be more what we used to be like." Gloria figures the old version of her daughter is coming back. 5 minutes past 3 p.m. Later that afternoon, Felix walks past her father, silent yet determined. She hops into a black 1998 Chevy Blazer and backs out of the driveway. This is the last known sighting of Felix Colden. About 2.5 hours later at 5:27 p.m. East St. Louis Police Officer Perry receives a call about an abandoned car in the middle of the 900 block of St. Clair Avenue. Officer Perry arrives on the scene in 8 minutes at 9:35 p.m. and finds an empty black Chevy Blazer sitting in the middle of the road near a stop sign. Assuming the vehicle run out of gas, Officer Perry checks out the interior. He finds the engine's not running, the lights are off, bearing no purse or phone inside. No sign of struggle, and resting there like any normal parked car would, he runs the license plates to see if it comes up as a stolen car in the database, but produces no hits. He calls a local towing company and runs the VIN number, confirming that the car was actually from Missouri and probably crossed state lines on a routine drive. Officer Perry enters the car's data into a nationwide car logging system, but the delay in the program causes the vehicle to remain absent from the National Impound Registry. Later in the evening, the car is taken into an Illinois car and truck impound lot, but the owners of the vehicle are not contacted. The next morning on December 19th, Gloria and Lawrence awake and immediately feel concerned for their daughter, who never stays out all night and hasn't been heard from since the previous afternoon. When Gloria calls law enforcement and provides Phoenix's date of birth, the police announce that because Phoenix is a legal adult and has only been gone less than 24 hours, there's no reason to believe she's missing. Gloria persists and informs the officers over the phone that Phoenix was in the 1998 Chevy Blazer, so they run a vehicle check. However, no red flags pop up in the system, despite the impound on 18th. Over the next couple of weeks, the Colton family searches endlessly for their daughter. They pass out flyers, call nearby hospitals, and visit potential hiding spots around town. Gloria even calls multiple local news stations, but none of them air Phoenix's story or help spread awareness. At the end of December, Gloria and Lawrence are informed one of their vehicles has been impounded at an East St. Louis car lot. They rush across the Mississippi River to find their Chevy Blazer exactly how Officer Perry found it, strewn with odds and ends belonging to Phoenix, but showing no signs of conflict. Gloria feels Phoenix was most certainly not the one who put the car on Sinclair Avenue, while Lawrence gets a sense that Phoenix is ultimately okay. On New Year's Day 2012, authorities finally pick up the case and declare Phoenix Colden an official missing person. A little over a week later, on January 9th, Phoenix's profile is first reported by news outlets and is given special spotlight by Sean Greer Thomas on January 25th, who then accidentally shares false information about the state of the Chevy Blazer found on December 18th, leading viewers to believe Phoenix had been taken from the car with its engine still running and door ajar. In February of 2012, the Colden family hires a private investigator, Steve Foster, to find Phoenix. Along with the local police department, detectives interview all known suspects, including both of the Michael boyfriends, who are cleared after interrogation. This would be the only time either boyfriend spoke out about the case, and their transcripts have not been released. Steve Foster also discovers Phoenix's safe-stealing habits, which leads to the reveal of Phoenix Colden's second birth certificate under the name of Phoenix Reeves, her mother's maiden name. Over the next couple of years, tens of thousands of tips come in regarding potential sightings of Phoenix. However, none bear any real fruit. These false wolf cries forced the Colden family into spending more money they had on PIs to track breadcrumb trails with dead ends, leaving the family no choice but to foreclose their home without any tangible hope. The police are unable to find any real clues or physical evidence either. In 2018, Oxygen Television Network videotapes a separate investigation into the disappearance of Phoenix with the original investigative reporter, Sean Dree Thomas, and a retired police deputy, Joe Delia. The two comb through the major points in the case and bring in a third private investigator, Dean Duke, to run a detailed database analysis of the second birth certificate of Phoenix. The system reveals only 4 matches in the United States. 3 of them are ruled out with complete profiles. However, one sticks out as peculiar. The final Phoenix Reeves match has no date of birth, no social security number, and no relatives, just an address for a house in Anchorage, Alaska that was active from January to June 2012. Joe and Dean traveled to Alaska and interviewed the neighbors around the address regarding Phoenix. However, none recognize her name from her missing posters. They eventually contact the woman now living in the house that was matched in the database, but the woman says that she's been the sole owner of the place since 2002 and has never seen or heard of Phoenix, neither with the Reeves nor Colden surname. While both private investigators are convinced this suspicious profile is that of the real Phoenix Colden, they have little else to go on. This is the most recent development of the still frozen solid disappearance. When looking across the entirety of Phoenix's cold case, there are plenty of curious items that could play a major role in the investigation. The most significant piece of evidence that offers insight into Phoenix's mindset is a selfie video she recorded on November 15, 2011, just a month before her disappearance. While the full video has not been made public, several compelling quotes from Phoenix have been collected and added to the case file. In the video, she begins by mentioning that she was abandoned by an unnamed person or group. She follows with, "This is ridiculous. I just want to start over." She continues, expressing a sense of frustration. "I just feel like I can't start the new me over." After a brief pause, she adds, "I don't know. I've got to see things for what they are. You know, like instead of thinking about it like that, see things for what they are." Phoenix then trails off, speaking a few inaudible words before focusing on the camera and reciting a version of the Sarantite prayer. "Lord, please help me accept the things that won't change and that I won't change the things that I can't change." As the video progresses, Phoenix shares, "That's why I don't like talking to people when I'm mad or whatever, because I say stuff that I don't mean, and that's when you learn to hold your composure. I want people to take me seriously." Due to the poor sound quality and moments of mumbling, some parts of her speech are unclear. Investigators Sean Dree Thomas and Joe Delia brought the video to audio engineer Brian Kwaskin to enhance the audio and decipher the rest of the dialogue. After working on the audio, Kwaskin uncovers a part where Phoenix says, "I just want to be happy. I feel so stupid because I let myself go a little bit." I probably would have been in a better situation if I would have stuck with how I used to be." She then adds, "Might as well ride in the back with the cops all up in here. The only person that won't let me down is me." While it's unclear how much longer Phoenix continues her self-reflection, the video ends with her giving one final look into the camera and saying, "Bye." Throughout the conversation she has with herself, Phoenix takes plenty of long pauses looking outside the window with a somber, agitated demeanor. Her voice is mellow, soft, and sometimes indistinguishable, yet doesn't come across as calm. Rather, Phoenix sounds as if she's truly worried about the state she's in, consciously struggling with her life in that moment compared to the good-natured lifestyle she lived in prior. It's in these moments that Phoenix herself clarifies she has been a completely different person for better or for worse. Some investigators theorize that Phoenix references a situation that puts her in legal trouble. All that she's hanging around a bad crowd of people who are pushing her to want out. Regardless, it's clear Phoenix is struggling with internal conflict, most likely as a result of external pressures. She seemed to rely on no one but herself, and her trust in the people around her is obviously deteriorating. Despite the tense atmosphere, however, Phoenix displays her sensitivity and cognitive ability to understand the world. She's attempting to decipher the present by working through the past to hopefully set up a brighter future. Sadly though, the timing of the video and being so close to the disappearance leads all involved to believe her crisis played a major role in the events that mysteriously unfolded. In the 7 years since Phoenix's cold case has entered the public sphere, the most discussed theory revolves around a possible human trafficking incident. When her disappearance was first reported, a rumor started that the 1998 Chevy Blazer driven by Phoenix was discovered on the 900 block of St. Clair Avenue with the engine running, the lights on, and the driver's side door swung open. This version of the story implies that Phoenix was most likely taken out of the car by a second party, and the Chevy was untouched. So who could have kidnapped Phoenix from her vehicle with sudden force? Well, it just so happens that the 900 block of St. Clair Avenue is positioned right next to the Interstate 70 highway, branded as the Human Trafficking Highway of America. Not only that, but the areas surrounding St. Clair Avenue in East St. Louis are notorious for high levels of crime, gang and drug-related activity, and human trafficking itself. Thus, multiple theories suggest Phoenix was driving in East St. Louis for whatever suspect business she had involved herself in months prior, was targeted by a group of pimps or trafficking operatives and taken away while at the stop sign and kidnapped into the underground oblivion. Human trafficking survivor Kat Summers believes the case had earmarks of usual trafficking situations, again pointing to the state of the car and degraded status of East St. Louis street life. Katie Rhodes, the founder of Healing Action, also felt like Phoenix was most likely pulled into the human trafficking sector. Although she claims Phoenix went into it with a sense of autonomy, Katie explained that pimps are master persuaders, often seducing their victims with the promise of freedom away from the control of parents. That would definitely be the case for Phoenix, who was unhappy living back at home and constantly fighting with their mother. If she was enticed to enter the realms of prostitution in exchange for independence, the pimp would have worked quickly to disorientate Phoenix and strip her personal life away. To add fuel to the fire, a woman from the local St. Louis Mothers of Missing Children group claims that in 2017, she received a message that included a link and a picture of Phoenix associated with a suspicious escort website. However, when investigators used the link, it directed them to a fake Facebook page with Phoenix's picture in the profile image, proving to be nothing more than a cruel hoax. This wasn't the only alleged sighting of Phoenix throughout the years, though. In March of 2014, an old friend, Kelly Fraunert, reportedly sees Phoenix in a plane going home from Las Vegas. Kelly was seated on her flight during boarding and looked up, catching a glimpse of a woman who appeared to be Phoenix with a group of women staring straight ahead. Kelly called her name, to which the woman looked up immediately and asked Kelly if she looked like someone. Kelly responded with, "Yeah, you look like my friend Phoenix," but this woman kept going, never engaging with Kelly again. She was wearing a zipped-up jacket, nice jewelry, along with women all bearing the same likeness. There were 2 men in the group with them, pro football player types in the age range of 35 to 40 years old. When they landed in St. Louis, Kelly disembarked and went to Southwest Airlines service counter saying she saw a missing person on the flight. Police came and combed through the airport, but never found the woman thought to be Phoenix or her crew members. Kelly is adamant the woman was Phoenix Cen, rating her confidence a 9 out of 10 during the Oxygen documentary series. There isn't much evidence to refute the possibility that Phoenix disappeared into the human trafficking trade due to the geographic tendencies and history of East St. Louis, yet it's hard to consider this when the state of the Chevy showed zero signs of struggle. While there were a few odds and ends strewn about the interior of the car, neither Phoenix's purse nor cell phone was found, unlike the original report stated. The car was abandoned rather than broken into, and unless Phoenix was taken somewhere, and the car was dumped afterwards, it's unlikely Phoenix was forced out. This then leads people to believe Phoenix was lured away by someone she knew and murdered. St. Louis, Missouri is a top 5 city for violent crime in America, and many sleuths point to the boyfriend situation and the secret nature of a double life outside of Spanish Lake. Michael B. was thoroughly investigated by police and early private detectives, and all parties are convinced he is innocent. While his alibis are known, Cell Phone Mike also makes sense as a suspect. In fact, Cell Phone Mike actually had a restraining order against him by a separate ex-girlfriend, who claimed he was both emotionally and physically violent. Not only this, but during Christmas time of 2011, a week after Phoenix's appeared, the ex-girlfriend states that Cell Phone Mike took special interest in missing person cases around the area, specifically checking up on the status of Phoenix's case after authorities reported it official. When the ex-girlfriend confronted Cell Phone Mike about these interests, he said Phoenix had been a customer of the convenience store he worked at, ending with a shouting match in which he asked, "Why are you worried about someone that's dead?" The ex-girlfriend has since declared she is unsure if Cell Phone Mike was just assuming or knew for sure. Even with the two Michaels cleared by police, a potential murder makes sense when considering all of Phoenix's bank accounts, cell phone records, and social media posts came to an abrupt halt the day she vanished. She felt like she was being followed for months leading up to the disappearance, and saw darkness on her horizon. The video she recorded stemmed from a hypothetical sticky situation in which she found herself in trouble involving the police and more than likely a larger unknown number of people. Taking it all into account, it makes sense to believe Phoenix's involvement with folks outside of her known social circle led her to illegal doings. Her use of the burner phone was used to navigate these operations, and on December 18th, she went out to resolve a dispute, ending up a homicide victim at the hands of these anonymous connections. All that being said, police are aware of the second cell phone and haven't reported it as a piece connecting Phoenix to any criminal organization. And while it is possible that because the search is ongoing, law enforcement cannot unveil case details, there's just not enough observable evidence to indicate foul play is involved. There's no blood, no wanted suspects, and no DNA in the Chevy Blazer that belongs to anyone other than Phoenix, Gloria, or Lawrence Colden. Nevertheless, no theory can be completely ruled out with the bizarre events surrounding Phoenix's vanishing and life as a whole. Living two lives with one being a complete mystery to the people investigators have access to makes extracting leads and following clues unnaturally tedious and borderline impossible. Absorbing all of the information, interviews, and intelligence provided across the board by multiple private investigators, we've concluded that Phoenix Cen up and left Spanish Lake on her own accord with the help of friends, at first using her pseudonym, Phoenix Reeves, and the alternative birth certificate before building a completely new identity and dissolving into society under a new independent position of power. First, let's discuss the abandoned Chevy Blazer, the contents of the car, mostly junk and random garments, leaving no signs of illicit activity or foul play. The collection agency notice regarding Phoenix's unpaid burner phone bill that was discovered makes people question why she would leave it behind so carelessly. But ultimately, it wouldn't matter because the phone was still under her name and easily accessible by authorities with investigative abilities. The vehicle itself looked parked and planted from first sight, according to Officer Perry, and was most likely used as a decoy maneuver by Phoenix or whoever was helping her leave. Putting the Chevy in East St. Louis would make it seem like something criminal encountered Phoenix and lead searchers on a wild goose chase, when really it was more than likely camouflage. Once the car was set up, Phoenix most likely had another person drive her away or had another car at the ready. In addition, there's a chance that Interstate 70 being so close as the trafficking highway of the US was merely a coincidence. In reality, it being a nearby escape route for a quick departure. It's also important to note that East St. Louis is across state lines in Illinois, which would later prove to throw a wrench in the initial search for Phoenix and the vehicle within the automobile database. The second key to the maze is Phoenix's immense critical thinking skills and subtle resourcefulness. Known associates of Phoenix described her as able to make friends with just about anyone, allowing her to adapt to a variety of situations and befriend people with specific sets of services. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Phoenix met friends of friends, who could assist with leaving the community and restarting an anonymous life. Now, who these suspects might be and to the degree of their craft is unknown, but Phoenix did have a head start with 2 birth certificates. Using the Phoenix Reeves document for secret plans wouldn't be tracked right away at all and would buy her precious time. She could make purchases, apply for a new social security number, and access any number of resources outside of the Golden Legacy. She was obviously smart enough to hide a second cell phone plan from her family and some of her friends, and could have had any number of other phones or communication methods. Remember, she was also intermittently stealing savings bonds from her family safe before moving back home, a potential method of collecting funds for her future departure. When the 2 private investigators, Joe Delia and Dean Duke, discovered the Phoenix Reeves identification address in Anchorage, Alaska, they visited the neighborhood, but came away empty-handed. Apparently, the woman who lived at the address under Phoenix Reeves owned the property during the months when Phoenix was linked to it from January to June 2012. However, this woman had never rented it out since purchasing it in 2002 and never saw anyone who looked like Phoenix during her 25-year residency. Yet, something isn't right about this anomaly. It just so happens that Phoenix Reeves' profile had 0 information points, except for an address that was dated just 1 month after Phoenix disappeared and appeared to be a sensible runaway location. Nobody in Anchorage would recognize Phoenix if she did indeed travel there to hide or plan a further identity transformation, and would serve as an excellent middle ground between the United States and starting anew in a foreign place like Japan. It also can't be ruled out that Phoenix paid off the woman who owned the house on record. Either way, we believe there's something very suspicious about Anchorage, Alaska, and concur she was definitely there at some point after her vanishing. In addition, many friends and connections to Phoenix have been less than welcoming to reporters, investigators, and anyone looking for answers. While they haven't been necessarily silent, a lot of her friends simply do not want to talk. In a sense, this could be analyzed as guilt behavior, but we feel that the guilt comes from their role in helping Phoenix, not hurting her. To pull off a feat like running away and becoming invisible, one would need help from the outside. Phoenix could have been using her new acquaintances as assistants in disappearing, including someone like Michael B. Their phone conversations increased in the weeks leading up to December 18th and ended with an abnormally long 116-minute call on December 17th. We theorized the 2-hour talk was a final discussion about the master plan, and the 1-minute call on 18th was Phoenix altering the plan's initiation, seeing as though it was her final call on the family plan phone. Again, it's possible more calls were made on the burner phone, but without those records, it cannot be stated with 100% certainty. Finally, when drawing this conclusion, we must address Phoenix's emotional and mental state at the time of December 2011. Multiple friends described Phoenix as unlike her normal self. She was agitated, displeased, and uncomfortable. Her relationship with her mother became untenable at times, ending with arguments and disputes, but various topics, as Phoenix spaced further and further away at church. Not to mention, Phoenix was constantly looking over her shoulder, regretting decisions in the past that took her down a path of present complications. Most telling of all was Phoenix's spoken wishes to start her life over, to reset her problems and return to the old version of herself. It's quite possible that she tried to do so in between November 15th and December 18th, with a couple of clues hinting of such efforts. However, she couldn't shake the shadow of darkness that loomed over her. As her friendship with Akira faltered and her paranoia grew, Phoenix became a product of an extremely strict upbringing, one that shielded her from real-world challenges and hindered her social development. She longed to expand her knowledge and experience life beyond the rigid rules set by the Colden household, but her desires were consistently dismissed by her parents. This gradually eroded her relationship with Gloria and Lawrence, ultimately making it easier for her to distance herself from the religious conservative identity everyone knew her by. Leaving, though likely not an easy choice, seemed necessary in her eyes, a way to escape the burdens that had turned life into an ongoing struggle. That being said, the case of Phoenix Colden is a deeply perplexing one, and every lead must be pursued. One of the main reasons we are sharing her story is the lack of national attention it received at the time of her disappearance in 2011 and 2012, which resulted in valuable time lost in the search. Gloria and Lawrence had to foreclose their home due to mounting investigation costs, and are now desperate for their daughter's case to gain wider exposure. They fear her files will be forgotten. Therefore, we are doing everything we can to keep the flame of hope alive, hoping that Phoenix will eventually be found. This is also the second case where our subject has a link to Anchorage, Alaska, a complete coincidence that only became apparent after our research into these cases. If any viewers are local to the area, please stay alert for any clues or leads related to the profiles of Trevor Deely, Felix Colden, or Phoenix Reeves. Although it may seem unlikely, you never know what might surface. Regardless, we must remember Phoenix Colden for the extraordinary woman she was, a brilliant fencer, a source of compassion and vibrant energy, who had the ability to make others laugh while sparking curiosity in culture, academics, and art. She was a talented musician, skilled in playing instruments such as the guitar and piano. In fact, Gloria's piano remains untouched, gathering dust, waiting for the girl who expressed herself so beautifully for 23 years to return. The piano waits for Phoenix Colden, just as we continue to fight the uphill battle in solving the mystery of her disappearance and the events at St. Clair Avenue. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed exploring these intriguing cold cases with me. If you found the video fascinating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Cold Case Mystique for more deep dives into unsolved mysteries. Your support helps me bring you more compelling content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or any cases you'd like me to cover next. See you in the next video, and remember, the search for truth never stops.